The battle raged on for many, many months, but Tim Cook and Tim Sweeney fought very, very hard, and after a gruesome battle and lots of lawyers getting paid, you want to talk about who really won after all these things? Man, imagine the paychecks the legal teams from both these companies were getting. The winner ended up being Tim, and the loser, Tim. Let's begin. So this subject's been going on for quite some time, but we didn't really get any type of closure until today. I've talked about it in my live streams and my podcasts in the past, but the main reason I didn't want to make a video on it is, jokes aside, guys, I do think this is kind of a interesting moral discussion, and I think both sides of the argument have their points about whether or not Apple has too much power over their own app store, and if it's a monopoly, and if the 30% cut is too high, and all that. People have very strong opinions on this, and I don't want people to feel disrespected or ignored if you disagree with mine, but personally, I was siding with Apple on this one. Not just because Apple sheep always has to defend Apple, but honestly, it made sense to me as to why Fortnite was kicked off the App Store, because Epic intentionally and knowingly broke terms of service that they agreed to, and of course, they went after Apple with this highly targeted marketing campaign, and despite me thinking that it's a fair discussion to talk about whether or not 30% of revenue being taken from all their developers and Apple getting to profit off of all of that success. You know, I could make the argument that that's an industry standard. You know, Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft are doing similar things. Even if their hardware is sold at a loss, I feel like that doesn't matter, because if Apple ended up selling their hardware at a loss, they would just take over even more of the market, and I don't think that would change people thinking they have too much power. And also here on YouTube, Google takes 45% of ad revenue that my channel generates. So if you think 30% is unfair, I mean, there's other places where it's much higher. But either way, I think the 30% cut is fair. Steam is doing the same thing. The Google Play Store does the same thing. And a lot of these counts that were being brought up in court were about how Epic wanted Apple to allow for alternative app stores and sideloading. Now, I know that there's a lot of techie people out there that think that would be really helpful and useful, but the truth is it does allow for a lot more scams and a lot more malware to be flooded across the internet that can now take advantage of your own iPhone hardware. So I totally understand as to why Apple is against it, because platforms like Android that technically allow that type of thing, even though Google discourages it, it does result in more scams, more malware, and overall a less rich app market. And I feel like the App Store has been doing great. Whole businesses and industries have been birthed around Apple's own store, and I think 30%, you know, considering grocery stores have been known to take 40 or 50%, is reasonable. And I love that they've changed it for smaller developers now, so that if you make under $1 million a year, the revenue cut becomes 15%, which in other app markets, 15% is like unheard of other than Epic. But the courts decided that Apple won on 9 out of 10 counts. The one thing Apple did not win on is the court has ruled Apple has to allow alternative payment methods within third-party applications. I actually think that the judge in the courts made a good call on this one, because I didn't think Epic made a great case by like trying to turn all of their fans against Apple by intentionally breaking terms of service and saying, hey, look, Apple removed our game, it's their fault, go get mad at them. Yeah, that's not a great way to go about this moral discussion, but Spotify is competing directly with Apple Music, and Spotify has been burning through cash for years, and they're trying to turn a profit, but they can't. And then here comes Apple, and they're able to price match Spotify, and they don't have the revenue cut to worry about, and of course Apple Music's integrated into iOS. It's way easier to sign up for, and they're also paying artists a lot better than Spotify is, because Apple has their own first-party advantage, and I don't think there's any way around that. No matter what Apple allowed on the App Store or with sideloading or with alt stores, making one email and one password accessible to a bunch of different services, you're always going to have an extra advantage there. But previously, Spotify was not really allowed to let people sign up for premium through their app without Apple taking a 30% cut, so obviously they just didn't have a way for you to do that, and you couldn't even put a link within the Spotify app that would say, hey, sign up for our premium option on our website. That way they don't have to deal with the 30% cut, and Apple was preventing them from doing that. Now, the flip side of the argument would suggest that Apple's worried about certain payment methods and certain links within apps forwarding people to scam sites or places that aren't supposed to really be there. So now that Apple's required to have alternative payment methods within the app, I'm guessing that the app review process is just going to have to look out for that type of thing. Apple's just got to be cautious if they see an app that is promoting using some kind of payment method that actually scams you or doesn't charge you as much as it says it will, that of course would be a problem and it can get rejected. But the courts did decide that the App Store in its current state was not violating any antitrust laws. Apple does not have to support sideloading or alt stores, and Apple can keep the 30% revenue cut for all in-app revenue generated. It's mostly just the in-app purchases that can now jump you to a web page through Safari where you can subscribe to Spotify Premium without the 30% cut, and the same thing, you'd be theoretically able to buy V-Bucks for a discounted rate because you won't be paying that 30% tax that Apple ends up taking from in-app purchases. Now that being said, neither company is required to bring Fortnite back on the App Store, if you're the type of person that cares about playing Fortnite still, but Tim Sweeney is still unhappy about the results because he wants there to be an in-app payment method directly in the app, not just a link that forwards you to a web page. And my guess is Epic still wants their own App Store. They want to bring Epic Games Store to iOS so they can bypass the App Store entirely, or they want to allow side loading and that type of thing. And my guess is because of the scams and the potential malware, Apple just does not have any interest in doing that. The courts understood that, and now Epic has still decided, no, we're not bringing Fortnite to the App Store. But it should also be mentioned, because Epic broke terms of service, Apple is within their right to keep Fortnite off of the App Store, and technically, if they wanted to, they could ban Unreal Engine games entirely because they terminated Epic Games' developer account. So they could be a lot more mean towards Epic if they wanted to. They haven't decided yet. There's no word on if they're going to make a ban that large, but I don't think they will personally. So if you were on Apple's side in this case, I do see it as a win. I think that the platform will remain more stable. There is the downside of services revenue likely going down because Apple's not going to make as much if a lot of different apps allow for, external payment methods. But overall, I don't think it was realistic for Apple to keep the 30% cut forever, no matter what, and not letting apps forward people to third-party payment methods. I just think that it's going to be easier for Apple to just make sure that there's no scams floating around and review every single app that does have those third-party payment links. Although those payments are now going to be processed by some other party, whether it's the company that developed the app or PayPal, and there could run into more issues or chargebacks or charges that now have to be supervised by other companies instead of Apple's. Epic, of course, is appealing the results of this case. I don't think they have many grounds though, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But overall, Apple's very happy right now because Epic also got a mandate from the judge saying they have to pay 30% of the several $1,000,000 they made when they broke terms of service and allowed a direct payment method within the app. Basically, Epic's got to pay a lot of the damages directly to Apple, and honestly, I always found the argument a tad ridiculous to say that Apple had a monopoly on the App Store. It's their store. It's like saying Netflix has a monopoly on, Netflix content. There are other phones out there you can buy that will allow alt stores and side loading. It's not like Apple is the only phone available in the US or in the world. There's plenty of other options out there. In fact, Android still sells in much greater volume than Apple does. And if a company out there decides that we just want to have a more locked down, closed operating system, whether or not that's what you prefer, whether or not you think that's good for app developers or good for consumers as a whole, I think that a company should have the right to choose if they want to do that. And if it results in a very successful app store, which clearly it has, tons of people spend money on the App Store every single year. Tons of people go directly through in-app purchases. There's a lot of proof in that case that having a locked down, well-maintained app market that does have fairly high cuts for all of your revenue, but it results in people spending more money overall, I feel like that's what developers should want. You want a large group of people comfortable with spending their money somewhere, and if you break that trust, and if you don't have that stability or that consistency that people are comfortable with, they're just not going to spend as much money, and that's overall worse for the developer. They don't get paid as much, and if you want to build a platform and have an app market that allows for alt stores and sideloading, good for you, but I don't think we needed the government to step in and say, Apple, you need to let other companies develop apps for your phone that you cannot verify, that may or may not do what they say they do, and result in more scams, result in more malware. So basically, I think the judge made the right call, because this helps Spotify be able to let people sign up through premium, and I think if Epic was smart, they would try to take the win on this one and just allow a link to a third-party payment service for V-Bucks that would be cheaper, but I guess this wasn't enough for them, so they're gonna keep fighting it. What do you guys think is fair? I know this is a tough subject, and I just hope we can respect each other at the end of the day. I'm just a sweaty guy in my room, in my house. I don't have that much influence. It's not the end of the world if we don't agree on every single subject. But thank you all for watching. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys guys in the next one.